Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Monica Ahmed, Senior Communications Advisor here at RPRA. Today's webinar is going to focus on working with the Producer Responsibility Organization, or a PRO, to meet your Blue Box producer obligations, as well as answering your questions, of course. So to ask a question, what you can actually do is just click on the Q&A tab, which is at the bottom of your screen, and type in your question or comment and just hit send. There's also an upvote feature, so you can like another person's question or comment, and that'll just move it up in the queue, so it'll get answered quicker. Now, if we can't get to your question because of time, or if your question is very specific to your own business needs, please feel free to reach out to our compliance and registry team. You can email them at registry@rpra.ca. Again, that's registry@rpra.ca. And in case you missed it, we'll also have that email address later on in the presentation. Speaking of which, the presentation is being recorded today, and the recording as well as the slides will be posted to our website. Now, with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Ellen White, who's our Manager of Compliance and Strategy, and she's going to kick off today's presentation.
Thank you, Monica, and thank you all of you for joining us this afternoon. We are fastly approaching the July 1st, 2023 deadline for when producers are required to meet certain obligations under the Blue Box regulation. So we wanted to take this opportunity to remind you of what your obligations are and provide you with information on how you can meet those obligations. So we're going to go through just a little bit of a review around the difference between, individual producer responsibility and what you may have been doing under the previous Blue Box system. We'll go through your management, collection, and promotion and education requirements. We will go through how you can meet these obligations, and we're going to set aside a fair amount of time for questions. So any questions that you have throughout the presentation, please take advantage of that Q&A and chat feature and type them in, because we want to answer as many questions today as possible. Many of you, hopefully all of you, received an email with our registrar statement that we sent on June 1st, 2023. We went through all of the information about what you need to do by July 1st and the consequences of not meeting the deadline to comply. And so we take the Blue Box transition very seriously. This is a transition that impacts the vast majority of residents in Ontario. And so we want to make sure that everyone who's obligated under the regulation is doing their part to make the transition successful. So if you're here because you got this email and you want to comply, thank you very much for joining. And again, please take every opportunity to ask the questions that might be preventing you from complying, so that we want everyone to be able to meet those obligations by July 1st. So now just going into a little bit about individual producer responsibility. We go to the next slide. You'll see that as of July 1st, communities in Ontario will start transitioning to the new Blue Box program. And when I say communities, I mean large and small across the province. So we have the Amajung First Nation transitioning. We have the town of Aylmer. We have the city of London, city of Ottawa. We have Shigang First Nation and Owen Sound and Toronto. So millions of Ontarians will start to receive Blue Box collection under the new system. In order for that to work, it means that all producers who make these materials have to be fully accountable for making sure that those materials are collected and recycled. Producers are going to be funding 100% of these costs. This is different than what you may have experienced in the Stewardship Ontario system, where it was a 50-50 split between producers and the municipalities that received Blue Box services. Under the new system, so for these communities that have transitioned, producers will fund 100% of those costs. That is to say, as of July 1st, 2023, there will still be communities who are operating under the Stewardship Ontario program. So producers will still have to pay their portion of the Blue Box services for those communities at the same time that they're required to fund Blue Box services in the new communities. Next slide. Under the Blue Box regulation, producers, your obligations include setting up collection systems which are either curbside or depot for households across Ontario. Producers are also required to process and recover enough resources to meet their management requirements. What we mean by that is any materials, any packaging or packaging-like products or paper products that are subject to the Blue Box regulation, based on the amount of material that you supply into the province, you have a management target for how much the volume of that material that must be processed and recovered each year. And so you are required to make sure that you're meeting that management requirement. Producers who have management requirements also have to establish a promotion and education system about the collection of Blue Box materials. And we'll get into details in a few slides, but this is just making sure that residents are aware of what material they're putting in their Blue Box, how that material is going to be collected, and who they can call if they have any issues with their collection. We talk about individual producer responsibility. Under Stewardship Ontario, as a steward, you signed up with Stewardship Ontario and they may have taken care of everything for you. Under the new regulation, you can still work with different companies to do the collection and management on your behalf, but you are still responsible under the regulation to make sure that those requirements are being met. And if they're not met, you may be subject to compliance and enforcement action. We're going to be posting a copy of this presentation. So you'll see on the slide next, there's some fine print, there's some links. So after the presentation, when this has been posted, you can read further and click through to the links and get lots of information about full definitions for each of the players involved in the IPR framework. But to start, I just wanted to highlight a few key players in the system. The first is the Ontario government. That's the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks. This is the government who has developed, approved, and issued the legislation. They make amendments. They've made a couple amendments to the Blue Box regulation since it's been issued, and they may continue to make additional amendments as required. They also issue direction letters. So from time to time, if an issue arises on a component of the regulation, the minister may issue a direction letter that would provide guidance for enforcement of the regulation that RPRA would communicate as well. RPRA or RPRA or the authority, we go by many names, but we are the Resource Productivity and Recovery Authority. And our job, we implement and enforce the regulations that are written by the government. We also have oversight powers. So if anyone has contravened the regulation, we do have the power to take enforcement action. That can include inspections and audits of producers. We can do investigations. We can issue compliance orders and administrative penalty orders, so fines, and we can also prosecute. Producers, we have a lot of information on our website about definitions of who a producer is under the Blue Box regulation. So I won't go into too much detail here, but I would encourage you to take a look at our website if you're confused about where in the supply chain you may fit as a producer or a retailer. And as well as if you're unsure of if the material, the packaging or the paper products or the packaging-like products that you supply count. But at a high level, a producer is a company that supplies Blue Box material that's made of paper, glass, metal, or plastic, or a combination, and that you're supplying them to consumers in Ontario. And again, there's a hierarchy. So if you are the brand holder of a product or packaging and you have residency in Ontario or Canada, or if you don't, there are certain hierarchies that come into play. So I would encourage you to go to our website for details or ask a question in the chat if you're confused about whether you are a producer. I'm hoping that most of you are aware because we have been you would have been reporting to us for a while now, but we're happy to answer any additional questions you have about that. We often talk about pros PRO stands for Producer Responsibility Organization, and these are the businesses that have been established to help producers meet their collection and management requirements and collect the material on their behalf and provide, anything from promotion and education to signing contracts with processors to make sure that your material is processed and recycled and those resources are recovered effectively. So as a producer, even though you are accountable under the regulation, we're not expecting every producer to go and hire a fleet of trucks. There are organizations who can fulfill those services on your behalf. And we'll talk more about pros as well. Processors, this is the business or the person that processes your material. So they cut it up, melt it down, turn it into a resource that can be recovered and reused to make additional materials. Okay, moving into talking about producer-specific management, collection, and promotion and education requirements. Your management requirement, this is the amount of material that you as a producer are responsible for processing into recovered resources in a given year. This is a screenshot from your registry account. So if you are curious if you have a management requirement and what that is, you're going to want to go into your registry account and log into your 2022 Blue Box Supply Report. That was the report that you completed last year, where you reported your 2021 data about material that you supplied into the Ontario market. And once you put all that information in, it gave you what your minimum management requirement is for 2023. So if you see in the example here, in certain material categories, this producer does not have a management requirement. You see 0 kilograms next to that category. But in others, so in glass and rigid plastic and paper, this producer does have management requirements. And so this producer is responsible for ensuring that, all 30,750 kilos of glass are processed in a given year in 2023. So to get this information, the easiest way to find your management requirement is to log into your registry account. And then you're going to click into the 2022 Blue Box Supply Report, and then you'll get this information. So in terms of establishing a collection system, producers have a number of options. Some are going to work better for you and your business than others. The first one is the common collection system. So this is the collection system that's been established and operated by producer responsibility organizations to provide curbside or depot pickup to eligible communities in Ontario. So as a producer, you can sign up to the common collection system. If as a producer, you have an alternative collection system that is capable of operating in every community where your material is supplied and is capable of collecting all of the material required to meet your management requirement, you can operate an alternative collection system. The third option is some producers may have an alternative collection system that works to collect a portion of their management requirement. They can also join up to the common collection system to make sure that the rest of their management requirement is recovered. Okay. In addition to establishing and operating a collection system, there are promotion and education requirements for any producer who has a management requirement. And the promotion and education system, it must inform residents of what can or cannot be put in a blue box, on what collection services are offered, whether the community will receive curbside collection and on what days, or the location of depots where residents can drop off their material. Must also inform residents on how they can replace or request a new blue box, and also provide residents with telephone number and an email address for any questions and concerns that residents might have. Okay, Now we'll talk about how producers can meet these obligations. So the majority of producers will meet their management requirements by joining up with the common collection system instead of establishing their own individual systems. Again, this common collection system, it was established and operated by producer responsibility organizations through a system access agreement. A copy of that agreement is available on our website for you to, if you are interested in understanding the details. For most producers, the way to join up with the common collection system will be by working with pros. We will share the contact information for every Blue Box registered pro. So producers will be required to sign a contract before July 1st with a pro on that registered list, and also to report your pro to us through your registry account. There may be some producers, we have heard of a few, who may want to sign on to the system access agreement directly. The system access agreement is run by an administrator, Circular Materials. And so for information about how to sign up directly with the system access agreement, you will need to contact them directly and sign up before July 1st. That would be, I think, a very particular case. If you happen to be a producer who also, I think, has the ability to process your own material, that may be an option you'd want to explore. But again, you would have to speak to Circular Materials for more information about what that would look like for you. But the vast majority of producers will be able to sign contracts with pros, and then the pros will manage all of the collection and promotion and education requirements on your behalf. So here's that list of registered Blue Box pros. This information is available on our website. And again, we will be posting these presentation slides so you can go and find those contacts on our website and contact them. And please contact them as soon as possible if you haven't already done so. It can take some time to discuss what your contract needs to entail. And so please don't wait until the end of the month. Please take action now to start those conversations with a pro so that you can be set up in advance of July 1st. Once you've signed your contract with a pro, you will need to let RPRA know. Easiest way, log into your account, and when it says follow these step-by-step instructions, after the presentation, you'll be able to click on them to understand those step-by-step instructions. But briefly, what you'll do is you'll log into your account, you'll navigate to your Blue Box homepage and scroll down, and at the bottom of that page, you'll have a question where it'll ask you, has your business contracted one or more pro? You'll click yes, and then you'll follow the instructions on the screen to provide us with that information. To register an alternative system, again, you're going to want to contact us at registry@rpra.ca today. In registering your system, you will need to explain to us how your system will service up to 5 million households in any community where your materials are supplied starting on July 1st. So it's not as simple as saying I have an address where residents can mail back their product. You need to really demonstrate how you'll be able to provide a collection service for any community where your materials are supplied. And you'll also need to explain how the material will be processed and recycled to meet the entirety of your management requirement. We've spoken many times that producers who don't meet their July 1st deadline for these obligations may face enforcement action. And so what do we mean by that? This could be a compliance order, which will be a document that outlines exactly what your contravention is and what you need to do to come into compliance. You may also face financial penalties. So RPRA, we do have the ability to issue administrative monetary penalties up to a certain amount. And so a financial penalties for contravention of these requirements, it can be a maximum base penalty amount of up to $200,000 for failure to establish a collection system, plus economic benefit. and $75,000 plus economic benefit for failure to establish a promotion and education system. And that economic benefit, that's going to be the value of the benefit that you gained from not complying. So I don't know if any producer on the line was thinking of doing the math of the cost to comply versus the cost of a fine. Just know that we're also doing that math, and that will be added to your administrative penalty. As a last resort, we can also prosecute. Before we jump into questions, I just wanted to share this slide with resources for you to learn more information. So if you just click to this one, yes, again, lots of information on our website, on our Blue Box regulation webpage, information about definitions, who's a producer, what materials are obligated. All of the information I provided today about how you can meet your obligations are all on our website. A copy of this webinar and previous webinars we've done in our Blue Box regulation learning series are posted on our website as well. We did a similar presentation to this one way back in February. So if you wanted to review that webinar, you can. We've also done a series on components of the regulation. There's lots of information there that you can watch. If you prefer to watch and listen, then read, we've got you covered there. We also have registration guides, compliance bulletins, FAQs, lots of information to answer questions you may have. So please visit our website. And finally, if after today you have more questions for us, please don't hesitate to contact our compliance team. You can contact us at registry@rpra.ca or by phone at 833-600-0530. Okay, so now I think we're ready to open it up for questions.
Great, so I can start with the first question here. So we have a question from someone who's asking, what do you mean by collection systems? What would that look like for a college or university? And I know this came through before you spoke about, curbside and depot and the common collection system. But maybe I'll just touch on it quickly to start that this program is really about residential Blue Box collection. So this wouldn't be about collection from your college or university or any collection system program that you run on campus. So this is about the materials that are supplied to consumers and are disposed of either, at home or in certain other facilities like a long-term care home or a school. So I think hopefully that helps. I don't know if there's anything else that you would add, Ellen.
Oh, thank you very much, Sydney. And just to introduce Sydney Baker, you've probably spoken to her. If you've written to us or called us about Blue Box questions, you've likely spoken to our program lead, Sydney Baker. And so thank you for answering that question. I don't have anything to add at this time, but if the person who asked the question has more to follow up, feel free to type below.
Great. So we have another question. And they're saying, I checked my management requirement, and then does section 40 require anything additional on top of submitting reports? So I'm going to say I'm not quite sure what this individual is asking, but I'm guessing that you checked your management requirement and you have a management requirement for at least one material category. If that's the case, then yes, you have to do additional on top of submitting reports. As Ellen's explained, you would need to establish these collection systems, ensure that the materials collected through the collection system are managed and so recycled into recovered resources. And then you'd also need to ensure that you have promotion and education systems in place. So I hope that answers the question. And again, if that wasn't it, please do add another question in there. So another one here is, how do we know which pro to choose? I don't know if you want to speak to that, Ellen.
Yeah, I can. It's going to be your choice. So under the system, it's a competitive marketplace, and each pro will can provide services for you. So you're really going to need to start reaching out and talking to the pros and have that conversation about what they can offer you and in terms of meeting your management requirements and costs. So that I'd recommend start reaching out to the pros on the list and having those conversations with them directly.
Yeah, and I know there was another question too about, does RPRA vet the pros, and how do you choose? And I would just add, similar what Alan's saying, is they're private companies. It's your choice which one you want to work with. And similar to any other vendor that your company is contracting with, you need to do your due diligence to determine which pro works best for your company and whether they're going to be able to meet the service needs that you have. So whether they're going to be able to meet your obligations under this regulation. So that is on producers to determine. But yeah, so you need to contact the pros and figure out which one works best for your company. There's somebody here who's asking for a demonstration of how to select a pro. That's not something we're set up to do today, but we have a step-by-step guide for how to manage your pro in the registry. So I think my colleague hopefully just shared that with you, and you can follow through that. And if you're having any troubles, feel free to reach out. So we have another question, sorry. So still a little unclear. We send in our reporting through circular materials each year, which triggers our financial obligation. Do we meet our obligation just by indicating that circular materials does this for us?
So you have to do a bit of reporting. So yes, if you've signed up with the Pro Circular Materials, you will have to report to them under the terms of your contract with them. You also have, as producer, obligations to report directly to RPRA what material you supply into Ontario each year. So you have to do both that reporting. For RPRA, it's once every year. We just finished our 2023 reporting cycle at the end of May. So if you haven't yet submitted your report for this year, please do so directly. And I'm not sure if that answers the question or if there's more information that we can provide. Sydney, am I missing anything there?
Yeah, I'm not sure. So, I mean, if you have a contract in place with circular materials to meet your collection, management, and promotion and education requirements, and you indicate that you have that contract in place in the portal, like that's the first step to being in compliance on July 1st. And then you just have to ensure that your pro actually does meet all the requirements on your behalf. So I think that covers it.
Yeah, the one thing we might add is, as I mentioned, we are in a transition. So while a portion of communities have transitioned into the new system, Stewardship Ontario is still operating for those remaining communities who are transitioning maybe later on this year or next year or in 2025. So as a producer, you may still have to report through Stewardship Ontario for that portion of communities who haven't transitioned yet. So make sure if you were under the Stewardship Ontario program that you're still communicating with Stewardship Ontario on what you need to do under the old program at the same time that you are gearing up to meet your requirements under the new system.
Yeah, so we have another question. We are currently working on this. We would require some time to procure the services and receive appropriate sign-offs with our organization, which may not meet the deadline. What recourse do we have? And there's a similar question as well. Is there a window for the 1st July deadline? Can we discuss this with your compliance?
So if you haven't met the deadline, you are out of compliance and you may be subject to compliance action. Having said that, we recognize that if you are in current communication with a pro and you can demonstrate to us that you are taking tangible steps to come into compliance, that is something we take into account as we're assessing what compliance actions we take.
Yeah, and so just to follow on to that, so I would say if you are in this situation where you're working on it and you don't think you're going to have it finalized by July 1st, send us an email, let us know that this is something that you're currently working on. So you can email registry@rpra.ca. And then as soon as you do have that contract in place, you'd want to log in and manage your pro. So sorry, here. So we have over 50 locations in different cities. Our products are fully recyclable. Each location pays thousands of dollars towards mainly garbage pickup. residents, which are our customers, all have Blue Box program and pay property tax for garbage recycling program, yet we still have to pay for additional recycling fees.
So a key component of the transition to the new system is that it's 100% funded by the producers who bring those materials into the province, and those materials end up in the Blue Box. So property taxes under the new system will not fund the Blue Box program. It will be funded 100% by the businesses that make those that packaging and products and that's supplied into Ontario. So it's not, so the fees you're paying are not going to be on top of property tax fees. It's going to be instead of.
Yeah, I think that's the shift from the current Stewardship Ontario, where the programs are operated and established by the municipalities and 50% funded by the municipalities. That really is the shift to 100% producer responsibility under this regulation. So I think that's a great answer. So we have another question here. What percentage of companies are already with a pro?
I don't have the final numbers, but there are a large number of producers who are without a pro, which is why we are making this big push, why you're seeing an upswing of communications to us. In order for the system to be successful, we need every producer who has management obligations signed up and taking responsibility for the collection of their materials. So I don't have an exact number for you, but it was a fairly high number of producers who had not yet signed up with a pro, and we're 2 weeks out from the deadline. So we're really hoping that that number, that percentage of producers who've signed up drastically increases within the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it is fluid. So I also don't have the numbers. So someone's asking, would it be simpler if we all just paid fees based on our annual reports as opposed to everyone finding a pro?
I think I can answer that. Yeah,
I can start. What I'll say, under this regulation, like one of the intentions of this regulation is that there is competition in the marketplace and that producers have a choice of which pro to work with. So it is an intention of the regulation that producers have choice, but with that choice comes the responsibility to choose which pro to sign up with. So I think that is an intended shift of this new regulation away from a model where everybody has to pay one industry funded organization and to a model where producers have choices of how they meet their obligations under the regulation. And it's based on the outcomes based regulation where we're looking for the outcomes. As long as you meet your obligations, how you do that is up to you as a producer. So
yeah, it may seem like more of an effort than what you might have done with Stewardship Ontario, but again, it does give you that choice of who you work with. You have more control over the costs that you might have, or to make sure that you're more involved, to make sure that your material is processed properly as well.
So there's another question here. Someone's asking, so is it better not to use recycled material? And I'm actually pretty unclear there. So I don't know if you want to try and clarify or, so I would just maybe, I don't know if this is the question, but I'll just clarify that regardless of whether your packaging or paper product or packaging like product is currently able to be recycled, it is obligated as Blue Box materials. So whether or not it's currently recycled doesn't affect whether you're obligated to report it as supplied into Ontario and whether you'd have a management requirement based on the supply of that material. If that wasn't the question, let us know. We have another question. With the addition of this program, will the province Ontario be lowering property tax, or will this just be another increase to food costs?
You would have to speak to your municipality directly about whether they'll be able to reduce your property taxes. That's not something that we have control over.
Okay, so I think that's all the questions for now. I know we have the survey about the webinar. Do we want to do that? And then if anyone has anything that you'd like answered or anything we've missed, please feel free to throw it back in the Q&A.
Thanks, Sydney. Sorry. Zoom is not cooperating with me today, clearly. But yes, I am going to just quickly launch a poll. So we're always trying to improve our webinars and our communications to you folks. So if you could just take a second to go ahead and answer these 4 quick questions. I'll give it a few minutes so everyone has a chance to respond. Just going to give the poll another minute so everyone has time. Sorry, still seeing a few more votes coming in, so just gonna give it a little bit longer. All right. Oh. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your feedback. Sorry, guys. I keep meaning to end it, but then I see it moving, so I want to make sure everyone's feedback gets captured.
No worries, all good. So we do have another question that came in. This is, the boxes consumed by the consumers are everywhere in the province. How can we make sure our pro picks up our garbage? And maybe I'll start to answer this one. So this regulation, your management requirement you'll see is based on a material category. So there's no obligation under this regulation that you collect your own materials. So maybe you supply a cereal box into Ontario, and you're right, that cereal box will end up anywhere in the province. There's no obligation that you collect your exact cereal box and ensure that it is recycled. Instead, you have a management requirement for the paper category, and you'd be expected to ensure that an equivalent amount of paper is collected and recycled in the province. And so within that paper material category is cardboard, boxboard, paper, newsprint. So there's a lot of materials in there, and you're just expected to ensure that an equivalent amount of paper material is collected and recycled. And then we have another question. Is there going to be any type of subsidies for businesses in regards to this program? It's already challenging to pay the fees, which will now increase.
Yeah, and I certainly understand that concern from businesses. RPRA, we will not be issuing any subsidies for businesses. I would encourage you to contact the government. I don't know what kind of subsidies are out there for businesses, but you may want to work through them. But no, RPRA, we will not be issuing subsidies.
Okay. Here's another one. We sell our product via retail and e-commerce. However, we buy the recycled material that is packaged from a third-party company. In this case, who is the producer? Is it us or the third-party company supplying recycled material to us? So I would say on this, like if you're unsure about whether or not you're the obligated producer for any material supplied into Ontario, your best bet is to email registry@rpra.ca and speak specifically about your business to our compliance team. However, I'll just note that at the top of the producer hierarchy is a brand holder resident in Canada. So it's really about the brand holder of the product or packaging that's being supplied into the province. And if there's no resident brand holder, the obligation falls next on an importer before finally on a retailer. So I'm not seeing a scenario in which someone's supplying you with like materials to use in your product or packaging would be the obligated producer. But again, you can reach out to the registry, compliance and registry team at registry@rpra.ca. Another question, how do you ensure that manufacturers out of province or out of country are held to the same standard as Ontario companies aren't being unfairly penalized.
So this would be a similar answer to the previous question about the producer hierarchy. And so for products where there is no brand holder in Canada, it then would fall down to the next person in that chain, the importer. So those materials that are being supplied, whether they're being produced by a company that's out of the province or in the province, they are still obligated in the same way.
And then we have another question. Are all the pros the same cost, or do we have to shop it to all the pros?
We don't regulate the costs that pros can charge. So you would have to contact with the pros directly to find out what their costs are.
Great. So I think that's the end again. So maybe we can wrap up unless I think that's probably good to end there.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Sydney and Ellen. Lots of really great info there. And again, just going to reiterate one more time, if anyone has any further questions or any specific scenarios they want to speak to our compliance team about, just send them an email at registry@rpra.ca. And with that, thank you again for joining us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.